Janet Damita Jo Jackson, born May 16, 1966, in the small town of Gary, Indiana. She is the ninth and youngest child born to Joseph and Katherine Jackson. Growing up, Janet would always see her brothers rehearse and always wanted to join, but wasn't allowed. None of the girls of the Jackson clan were originally allowed to partake in the musical side of what Jo Jackson was building with her brothers of the supergroup, the Jackson 5. Jo felt at the time that the entertainment aspect was just for the boys as a means to get out of Gary, Indiana. The more Janet would sing around the house, the more her talent was taken notice to.
I didn't want to hang out with my sisters. They were boring. The nails and the hair and the makeup. And I don't want to have anything to do with any of that. I was just strictly a tomboy. Playing the drums when they were rehearsed for a tour. Just getting in the way. But they never kicked me out. A lot of baby brothers and sisters always get kicked out of the room. The door slams behind them. They never treated me that way.
Janet wouldn't make her TV debut till January 25th, 1975, on The Carol Burnett Show.
Go home, Jan. What you going home? Go. Not until I sing my part. What's your name? Janet.
Her first TV appearance was so well received that Jo Jackson began having Janet and the girls practice just as much as the boys did in preparation for the Jackson Family Variety Hour, which featured Janet and all her musically talented siblings.
Definitely no. Say, mate, there's a concert over at the Cotton Club. What do you say we go paint the town red?
Love to.
You're a good baby.
When I'm good, I'm very, very good. When I'm bad, I'm even better.
Being on this show with her siblings would take her to new heights as Hollywood came knocking on Jo Jackson's door seeking Janet to audition for roles on television. Janet would get her big break in acting when she would get the role of Millicent Penny Gordon Woods on television sitcom Good Times during its 4th season.
Honey? Honey? What's wrong?
He wouldn't give them to me.
Who wouldn't give you what, baby? What's the matter?
I went to get the gym shorts.
You went to Tina's?
No, you told me not to, so I called someone else, but she wasn't home.
As time would go on, Janet's career in Hollywood would begin to skyrocket as she began to get more roles in different television sitcoms. By age 16, her father Joseph would arrange a record deal for her with A&M Records, where she would be releasing her self-titled first album. The album didn't peak too well on the charts, so in comes album number 2 entitled Dream Street. The first single, Don't Stand Another Chance, rose to number 9 on the Billboard 200. The charting of this album did way better than the first, but Janet wasn't happy originally with the choice of music that she recorded. By age 18, Janet had taken on the role of Cleo Hewitt on the 4th season of Fame in 1984. That very same year, Janet would secretly marry singer James DeBarge of the DeBarge family. During their 1-year marriage, they would live together with her family at the Havenhurst home. This 1 year had proved a lot for Janet when it came to marriage and what direction she needed to head.
I was doing the show Fame at the time, which was, I have to tell you, I didn't enjoy it at all.
Why?
I didn't want to be there. The cast, they were sweet to me. The kids were sweet to me, but they would do little devilish things sometimes. They would smoke weed behind my bungalow and it filter into my bungalow, and that would give me a headache. So I'd have to walk out, and we'd have our breakfast on set waiting, and I'd open my breakfast and be all gone.
Oh no, they would take your breakfast?
Yeah, but see, I'm being the baby of the family, you're used to.
Right, you're used to that.
Exactly.
Right.
So, but they were very sweet and very fun kids, very loving kids. So they would play pranks. I was the newest kid on the block. So, but I was not in a great space. I was 18. I had gone through a lot in my life. I was in a relationship. No one knew that I was married. I was going through a lot with my marriage. And it's not a secret. Everyone knows he had issues at that time with drugs. And it's very difficult on a kid.
In January 1985, she would file for an annulment from James, and it would be granted later that year. His frequent use of drugs and alcohol was something Janet and her family wanted no parts of. The tumultuous marriage would be the reason Janet quit her role on the TV show Fame. In early summer 1985, Janet would fire her father Joseph as manager and hire A&M executive John McClain as his replacement. She would then find her own place and move out of the Havenhurst house. Janet was quoted saying, "I just wanted to get out of the house, get out from under my father, which was one of the most difficult things I had to do, telling him that I didn't want to work with him again." This infuriated Joseph Jackson. He felt that John McClain was just trying to use Janet as a career boost. John McClain becoming her manager, Janet felt was the best decision as he gave her the freedom to create music from which she knew would carry a message from her to her fans. This is also when he paired her with super producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. This took Janet into ownership of her musical career. She wanted to establish her own musical identity out of just being known as Michael's little sister. This led to her album being nicknamed Control, which was released February 4th, 1986. This album would debut at number 84 on the Billboard 200 and would spawn hits like What Have You Done For Me Lately, Pleasure Principle, and the title track, Control. In the US alone, the album went 5 times platinum, which solidified her independence as she climbed up the pop charts. Janet, like her brother Michael, also broke barriers, both having videos run on MTV, which during a time period when not many black artists were featured. This helped kick open the door for many other black artists. In 1987, Janet would receive a Grammy nomination for Album of the Year for Control. This pushed her even farther up the ranks for more awards and nominations for the album. By September 1989, Janet's music style would evolve into a more socially conscious style with the release of Rhythm Nation 1814. Her title single, Rhythm Nation, would break barriers musically, and the music video for the song would cause A&M Records to try and pull the video before it was even filmed. The video, filmed in black and white, matched up to the message of the song, which is racial harmony, and she wouldn't allow the label to interfere with her vision.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Rhythm Nation would win Janet her very first Grammy and would go on to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. She would then go on her very first world tour.
Coming in March, One Nation, Indivisible, under Janet Jackson. MTV presents Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation World Tour 1990, her first ever concert performances. We'll be with Janet in Miami for the kickoff show March 1st, and stay with Janet for updates, road reports, and all the Rhythm Nation news until the very last performance. MTV, Janet Jackson, her first ever tour, and you.
We're about to make history.
After the tour, Janet would create the Rhythm Nation Scholarship, which collected $450,000 in proceeds, in which $5,000 in scholarship funds would go to a performing arts student who attended United Negro College Fund affiliated schools and programs. This was just the start of Janet's amazing career, but an amazing career wouldn't be amazing without controversy.
Like a moth to a flame burned by the fire. My love is blind, can't you see my desire? That's the way love goes.
This is only the beginning of Janet's story as she headed into legendary status. Her rise to the top wouldn't come without controversy as she headed towards legendary status, and that controversy will be discussed in a second part.
Like a moth to a flame burned by the fire. My love is blind, can't you see my desire? That's the way love goes.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Janet would debut on television in 1975 and have her first music contract with A&M Records by age 16 with assistance from her father Joseph. Janet would release 2 albums with her father as manager before she would fire him to take control of her career. By her 3rd album, she became a hit amongst the 80s generation alongside her brother Michael Jackson. By the late 80s, she would have the world move into her rhythm, and that rhythm is the superstardom. At the end of the last video, I mentioned that any rise to superstardom comes with controversy, and that controversy began for Janet in the 1990s. In 1990, Janet will receive the honor of a lifetime by receiving a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on Hollywood Boulevard. In 1991, Janet would marry Rene Elizondo, who was formerly a backup dancer to her sister LaToya. 1991 would also be the end of her contract with A&M Records, and she would then sign a $40 million contract with Virgin Records, which at the time made her the highest paid artist of the early 90s. By 1993, Janet had discovered another side of herself musically, where she began to create music that showed sexual maturity. Her style of dress even changed. She went from fully covered to now showing skin. Janet had become comfortable with who she was and expressed that in her 3rd album, simply titled Janet. The album cover for the Janet album would cause controversy with Janet, the media, and her parents. The album cover features a man hidden behind Janet, holding his hands over her chest. The man holding her chest was her husband, Rene Elizondo. This album cover would be snipped down to just show her face on the front of the cover and stomach and legs on the back due to FCC regulations. However, the full-bodied photo would be displayed on Rolling Stone magazine in September of 1993, and it will go down in musical history as one of the sexiest magazine covers of all time. That same year in 1993, Janet would take on the title role Justice, starring alongside rap legend Tupac Shakur in the John Singleton film Poetic Justice. Filming of the movie would go smoothly till it came time for the scene where Tupac and Janet would have to share an intimate kiss. According to a story told by Tupac, Janet would request that he would be tested for STDs before performing the kiss, but it wasn't actually Janet who suggested the testing for STDs. It was her husband, Rene Elizondo. Rene Elizondo would manage some of Janet's career in the 90s, as well as direct some of her videos. Not only that, he would get himself a role as an extra in Poetic Justice to keep an eye on Janet and Tupac, since they had to work very closely for this film. On the Janet album and the Poetic Justice movie soundtrack, the song Again, which was the love theme for the film, would be featured on both music compilations. This song would lead to 1 Academy Award nomination and 1 Golden Globe nomination, both for Best Song. She would also bring home a Grammy for Best Song for That's the Way Love Goes. By November 1993, Janet would go on the Janet World Tour, which took her around the world in less than 17 months. By April 1995, Janet would finish the last of her tour and re-sign another contract with Virgin Records, reportedly worth $80 million, which again gave her that rank as the highest paid artist of the late 90s. Also that same year, Janet would ask her brother Michael to join her on the song Runaway. She told him when she wrote it that she had him in mind and wanted to sing it as a duet. Michael had another plan of jabbing back at the public who always viciously attacked the Jackson family name, especially him and his sister. This would lead to them writing and releasing the song Scream. This song will go on to win a Grammy for Best Short Form Music Video. After the release of Scream, Janet would go into a deep depression and anxiety that left her drained mentally. Not only did she overwork herself on the tour, but she would also go through the stresses of married life that wasn't meshing with business decisions made by her husband and also came from her missing the rest of her family. After disappearing from the world of music for almost 2 years, Janet would re-emerge from her depression stronger than ever with a new look. She sported red hair, nasal piercings, and tattoos. Her experience with depression and other issues would be chronicled on her 1997 album, The Velvet Rope. Janet is quoted saying, "We've all driven by premieres or nightclubs and seen the rope separating those who can enter and those who can't. Well, there's also a velvet rope we have inside us, keeping others from knowing our feelings. In the velvet rope, I'm trying to expose and explore those feelings. I'm inviting you inside my velvet rope. I have a need to feel special, and so do you. We share a burning need to belong. During my life, I've been on both sides of the rope." The very first song to be released as a single was Got Till It's Gone featuring Joni Mitchell and Q-Tip, which helped Janet receive another Grammy for Best Short Form Music Video. After much more recognition and awards was received for the Velvet Rope album, Janet would then go on the Velvet Rope Tour, which gave fans a personal and intimate look at her as a performer. On the World Tour, Janet would hold one of her concerts at Madison Square Garden, which would air on HBO. For this HBO special concert, Janet would receive an Emmy. As for the proceeds Janet would receive from her Velvet Rope Tour, she would donate half of the money to America's Promise, which is a charity ran by Colin Powell. As the concert lights began to dim at the end of the tour, she would take a break from touring till 2001. By the year 2000, at the break of the new millennium, Janet would take on the lead role of Denise Gaines opposite actor-comedian Eddie Murphy in the comedy movie Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps.
I want to put a trumpet in my head and run around the restaurant and blow Hallelujah, Yankee Doodle. That's my business.
All I'm hearing is trumpets and answers. I don't want to hear that. Hey.
You watch it now. Reach over here again, you're going to pull back a note.
Like her first film, Poetic Justice, she would provide the lead song for the movie soundtrack. That song is Doesn't Really Matter. This song would be the first single released on her 2001 album, All For You. Doesn't Really Matter would shoot up the Billboard Hot 100 to the #1 spot. Also around this time, Janet would go through a divorce from her husband, Rene Elizondo. Janet would go on another tour before she would take another break from touring. In 2004, pop singer Justin Timberlake would join Janet on stage for her guest spot at the Super Bowl halftime show. During the end of the performance, when Justin would say his last line, he and Janet were supposed to pose, and he would rip the top layer of her leather breast cup off of her outfit. When Justin went to pull, the whole cup ripped, exposing her chest to the goers of the halftime show. The media would bash Janet for this and say this was a publicity stunt, when in fact this was a simple wardrobe malfunction. Janet would face the backlash alone after the performance, while Justin Timberlake stayed quiet.
So Janet says that this is going to be the first and the last time that she ever talks about what happened that day. First of all, I have to ask you this. Was it planned, Janet?
No.
It was not planned.
Well, what people don't understand is he was to take and rip the piece off that he did.
The leather piece.
Right, but more came off than what was supposed to.
So he was supposed to pull that off and we just see the red
Yes.
there. And he ripped the whole thing.
Yes.
So he had you practiced or whatever before?
Yes, we did.
And so the moment that happened, you immediately covered your breast because you didn't want to be exposed. If you wanted to be exposed, you wouldn't have covered it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Very embarrassing.
However, in a statement to MTV in 2006, Justin Timberlake is quoted saying, "If you consider it 50-50, then I probably got 10% of the blame. I think America is harsher on women. I think America is unfairly harsh on ethnic people. I could have handled the situation better in the immediate aftermath. If there was something that I could have done in her defense, I would have." With the halftime Super Bowl fiasco that happened in February 2004, Janet would still feel confident enough to release her 8th album, Damita Jo, which was produced by then Virgin Records head Jermaine Dupri. Critics would focus more on the Super Bowl incident than the music, which was what caused album sales for Damita Jo to decline. During all the drama behind this halftime Super Bowl fiasco, Jermaine Dupri would be by her side. He would be there for Janet when the media seemed to treat her so coldly after that performance with Justin Timberlake. The relationship between Janet and Jermaine would blossom publicly, and their relationship got Janet through what could have potentially ended her long-standing career. In 2006, Janet would release her 9th studio album, 20YO, with her boyfriend Jermaine Dupri and her longtime friends Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis as the album's producers.
Jermaine, myself, and Jimmy and Terry produced the album. They're incredible. Jermaine is a modern-day Quincy Jones in my eyes.
This album was a dedication to her 20 years of releasing music. The album would debut at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, but the board at Virgin Records was not impressed with the album or the album sales, which led to Jermaine Dupri being fired as the CEO. By 2007, Janet would take on her 3rd movie role in Why Did I Get Married? This was her first acting gig in years since doing The Nutty Professor 2.
Playing an everyday housewife caught in the middle of a kitchen catfight in this exclusive extra sneak peek behind the scenes of her new movie, Why Did I Get Married?
Janet would also leave Virgin Records and sign a new record deal with Island Records. In the summer of 2009, just before leaving to film the sequel to Why Did I Get Married, she would find out about the death of her brother, pop legend Michael Jackson. All of that anger she felt towards his loss would be channeled into her role once filming for the movie.
You don't want people to know we have a problem!
That's not the only thing that had Janet breaking down. Filming took place shortly after the sudden death of Michael Jackson.
I was going through definitely a tough period at that time because my brother had just passed, and it was very, very cathartic to be able to release.
Because you have that grief and you don't know what to do with it, so to have somewhere to, it doesn't go away, but to have something to channel it to, it really helps.
That pent-up anger.
All of her stress also behind her brother's loss would be the reason why she and Jermaine Dupri would actually split. The following year in 2010, Janet would begin to date Wissam Al Mana, which eventually led to the secret wedding, which would be Janet's 3rd marriage. According to reports, Wissam is a billionaire business tycoon in the Middle East who was always seeking a traditional Muslim wife to marry. He and Janet would meet at the grand opening of a new hotel Wissam had funded in Dubai while she was there on a visit. Janet was fresh off of her breakup after 7 years with former Virgin Records CEO Jermaine Dupri. She was still going through the emotions of the breakup, and she was also still going through the pain of the loss of her brother Michael. Wissam at that time was swooping to her life at a time that she was truly hurting and needed comfort. Janet and Wissam would marry in 2012. At the wedding as gifts, they exchanged large donations to each other's favorite children's charities. During the marriage, Wissam would reportedly be verbally abusive and also tried to control what Janet wore, which totally changed who she was at the time. In late 2015, Janet would go on another tour, and by mid-tour in April 2016, she and her husband Wissam would be expecting their first child, which put her tour on hold. In January 2017, Janet would give birth to her very first child, Wissam Al Mana. 3 months after the birth of her child, she and Wissam would agree to divorce. This is something that Janet would reveal to her fans via Twitter, that she would be returning to her tour, and she and her husband are officially over.
Hey you guys! Oh my gosh, I look like I have bags under my eyes. Oh well. Hey you, maybe I do. Hey you guys, it's me, Jan. Just in case you don't recognize me, because I have put on quite a few since I had the baby. Can you please be quiet, Randy? Nobody's talking to you. Thank you. Since I had my baby. But I thank God. I thank God for him, you guys. He is so healthy, so beautiful, so sweet, so loving, such a happy baby. That's my nieces. Thank you. This message was supposed to be about something else, but I'll get to that in a minute. I just want to keep it real with you guys for a second. Yes, I separated from my husband. We are in court, and the rest is in God's hands. Now for that something else. I'm continuing my tour as I promised. I'm so excited, you guys. So excited. I decided to change the name of the tour. State of the World Tour. It's not about politics. It's about people, the world, relationships, and just love.
In 2019, Janet is living her best life and staying true to who she is, without fear of anything. Her becoming a mother totally changed the way she looked at the world she once was ridiculed by so many times throughout her life and career. Janet has shown us her moves. Janet has serenaded us with her vocal talent, and she has captivated us with her superb skills as an actress. Janet led us into her velvet rope, and the message left behind through her music will always have the nation dancing to her rhythm. Coming from the greatest family in the world of entertainment, this is her legacy. This is the Jackson family legacy. Much love to everyone who tuned into this video. Please continue to like, subscribe, and comment on these videos as more content is coming soon, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.